Hello, everybody. A couple years ago, I was in the midst of guiding a tour, maybe the Mike Huckabee tour, the former governor of Arkansas. He comes to Israel on tour twice a year, and I work on both these tours each year. And on one of these tours, one of his people, while we were pulling away from the city of Nazareth, says to me, "Steve, thank you for your service." And I started to blush. And I asked myself, or said to myself, I think this guy thinks I served in the American Army. He's heard both myself and maybe the governor mention that I had been in the Army, but I think he's confused. I think he thinks that I was in the American Army, and therefore I really have to let him know that his thanks is misplaced. So I say to him, "Sir, for the sake of honesty, I just need to tell you, I didn't serve in the American Army. I served in the Israeli Army." And he says to me in response, "And that's why I said to you, Steve, thank you for your service." You see, that gentleman got it. He understood that Israel is the tip of the spear of the Western world's defense, for lack of a better word, against the global jihad, Islamic fundamentalism. Israel sits at the very vanguard. If you would go into your imagination or recall of any films or documentaries that you've seen about World War I, how it was trench warfare. And if you were to look at the battlefield from the sky, you would just see line after line after line of deeply dug in trenches. Israel sits at the most forward trench in the global war to defend those of us who belong to Western world or civilized society from the barbarians waiting at the gates to enter our society, as they did on September 11th in this country, the United States, and as they did on October 7th along the border between Israel and Gaza, in which they killed the equivalent of 48,000 people. That's if it were America's population, okay? If you compare the two populations, 38,000 people. That's what that's akin to. And yet, there's already a weakening of the resolve of the West, including currently the United States, in its resolve to let Israel fight this war to victory. From the very beginning of the war, this administration, the Biden administration, which has done many good things, and just to recall some of those good things, it sent two battle carrier groups to the Mediterranean, the Gerald Ford, which is the largest in the American naval arsenal, and the Dwight Eisenhower, two entire flotillas. Okay, that's a huge amount of American power right there, probably overkill if you were to ask me, there to deter anyone else, like in Iran and perhaps even a Hezbollah, from jumping into the war. In addition to that, the United States has sent Israel plane load after plane load after plane load of advanced weaponry that it had not had in its arsenal previous to this war with Hamas, particularly bunker busting bombs. Okay, the very bombs that are being used and have been used to some degree of success to destroy 150 Gaza tunnels within a system of 300 miles of tunnels. Speaking of which, by the way, Israel bombed both yesterday and today a Palestinian refugee camp known as Jabalia, and this, of course, is in the leading headlines of news networks like CNN, because much of the neighborhood collapsed subsequent to Israel's attack. Now, Israel said that it was attacking a command center of Hamas. They were trying to kill a senior member of Hamas, as well as a battalion of fighters that use that Jabalia refugee camp as their headquarters or base of operations. And what Israel says is that when it dropped these bunker busting bombs on that tunnel, It set off explosions and subsequent collapses of the tunnel network under the neighborhood that's built on top of them, and caused a lot of the buildings above these tunnels to implode, or to collapse inward. Okay, for the foundations of the building were above these tunnels. And that's why several of these buildings have been collapsed. Now, the Palestinian, or shall I say, Hamas-run Ministry of Health of Gaza says that in the process of doing this, Israel killed hundreds of civilians. Now, remember, you can't believe anything that Hamas says. This is the same Hamas that both accused Israel of bombing a hospital 2 weeks ago, as well as claiming or inflating the numbers of those killed, claiming at the offset that 500 people were killed in that hospital. But within just a couple of days, it was proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that was misfired, fell down on the hospital, and as far as the total of dead, only about 20 to 30 in total. It didn't even hit the hospital directly, it hit the parking lot of the hospital. And therefore, are we to believe Hamas that hundreds of people died in Israel's attack on this Hamas headquarters or command center in Jabalia refugee camp? I don't trust one word that comes out of Hamas. But it's possible. It's possible that 100 people died, 200 people died. Now, don't forget, Israel has given these people almost a month to retreat to the south to a safety zone that has been created south of what's called the Brook of Gaza, or Wadi Aza in Arabic, okay, or Nahal Gaza in Hebrew. Anybody who's south of there has been receiving food. By the way, the United States has insisted, and Israel capitulated to this a day or two ago, that they be allowed to bring in 100 trucks filled with food, water, and medicine each day from the border between Gaza and Egypt. These trucks are in Egypt, and Israel has been basically made to agree to this. This is a Biden imperative. They must allow 100 trucks a day into Gaza with food and water and medicine. Now, of course, many of you are like, Steve, how can you be against that? This is humanitarian aid. Well, the reason why I'm against it is two reasons. One is I know a lot of it's going to be siphoned off by Hamas itself or its fighters who are under pressure because they have a limited amount of food and water for their own use. And number two, Hamas and various Gazan citizens are holding 245 Israeli and other nationals as hostages. Why should Israel provide for Gaza's citizens until at least Hamas is forced to agree to let the Red Cross or some other organization come in to see what the status and health and welfare is of Israel's hostages in Gaza? Why does Israel owe Gazans anything when 250 of its citizens haven't been heard of, for the most part, or heard from in the last 4 weeks? All right, you want aid to go into Gaza? All right, well, make Hamas agree to let the Red Cross or some other international neutral organization come in and check up on the welfare of Israel's hostages. And then maybe we can talk about letting aid in to Gaza. So because of this, you're starting to see, because of the casualties at the Jabalia refugee camp and casualties mounting up on the Gazan side, you're already seeing the pressure amp up in the Biden administration. Nearly daily calls between the Biden administration and Israel, constantly repeating to Israel, we insist that you do a better job of trying to keep citizens of Gaza out of harm's way. Almost to the point of twisting Israel's arm, making it fight the war with one hand, but with the other hand or with the other eye, constantly having to look back to see how Uncle Sam or Uncle Joe is with if he's still giving Israel some rope or some line to fight the war. Because if Israel, folks, does not fight this war to total victory, it's not just a huge blow to Israel's ability to deter its enemies in the future. It's a huge blow to America's ability to deter its enemies, because the Arab and Islamic world is looking on and saying, look at these Americans. They don't have the resolve to fight. They don't want to fight. They're gutless. They're afraid. And this is how, this is received by the Arab and Muslim world. If America would simply let Israel loose to fight the war, Israel's army is among the most moral armies in the world. How do I know? I was an Israeli soldier. And I remember in one of my pockets of one of my fatigues, I had to carry a laminated copy of the Geneva Accords. And occasionally we were called together as soldiers where we had to listen to the sergeant read those Geneva Accords to us. When we had to listen. We probably even had to take a quiz on whether we comprehended what the international standards, and rules of warfare are. Israel is one of the most civil armies in the world. And I also remember a talk that one of my commanders had with us before one of our own military operations. And I remember he said to us, whatever you do, don't kill civilians. Now, I loved his answer. Listen to what he told us. It's not because those Arabs love us. They don't. Contrary to what you hear from the Biden administration, most Arabs in the West Bank and Gaza hate the Jews, not just Israel, hate the Jews with a genocidal hatred. In essence, Hamas is Gaza, and Gaza is Hamas. And therefore, I remember the commander said to us, so I'm telling you, don't kill civilians. It's not because those people love us or they want to coexist with us, but he said it's because I want you, should you live to graduate as an alumnus from the Army and go on to live a peaceful life as a citizen, to have peace in your soul 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, that your conscience doesn't kill you as you go along life's way. In other words, don't kill civilians for their sake. Don't kill civilians for your sake, because God didn't make us to just be wholesale killers. And he was right. And I just remember being told repeatedly to safeguard civilians. Now, this was back in the 1990s. I served in the infantry, something called the Golani Brigade, in the years 1996 and 1997. And I doubt anything has changed since then. Israel is one of the most moral armies in the world. Now, I want to show you some footage, which I just think is an amazing, maybe the most amazing footage to be released by the Israeli army since this war's begun. Israel's army has done a great job of keeping a fog over the warfare and not letting too many facts about this war trickle out into the media. Now, it makes my job a little harder because I'm trying to give you war updates every day. And I do give you guys insights each day that you're not going to get in the Western news or the American news, because I follow every day Israel's media. Okay, I basically get all my information from Israel media and Israeli sources, and they far eclipse anything you're going to get in the American media. But with that said, even Israel's own media is limited on how much they know about what's going on the battlefield in Gaza. But look at this footage. Okay, just check this out, and then I'll pick up things right after the footage. What you just saw, my friends, or at least at the beginning of that footage, were two Merkava 4s. Those are considered not only Israel's most recent and modern tank, but it's also one of the best tanks on the planet, and it's indigenous to Israel. Those tanks are designed in Israel, made in Israel. And there you saw these two Merkava tanks. What does it look like to be a machine gunner shooting these machine guns from the tank? Okay, you saw the tanks shooting on the move, as well as some urban combat in the infantry, following the footage of the tanks. Now, this next footage I want to show you, and it's about half a minute long, is the founder of Hezbollah railing against the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, who is Hezbollah? Hezbollah is a Shiite militia. Shiism is Iran's brand of Islam. And there's an enclave of these Shiites in southern Lebanon along the border with Israel. Their militias called Hezbollah, and they not only get their weapons from Iran, but they take their marching orders from Iran. Now, if you follow my channel for the last couple of weeks, you know that I've told you that Hezbollah is on standby. They've participated symbolically since this war has begun, but they haven't really used even, I would say, more than 5% of their firepower. They've been sitting on the side, okay? Now, here's a clip of the founder of Hezbollah railing against the Ayatollah Khomeini for basically doing nothing since this war has begun. The Ayatollah has ushered threats. He constantly moves the goalposts and says, well, if Israel does tomorrow goes into Gaza on a ground campaign, well, then we're going to get involved. Then Israel does go in on a ground campaign, and then he moves the goalposts even further. Says, well, now if Israel goes in a couple miles into Gaza and does destruction to Hamas, then we Iranians are going to get involved. And then Israel gets into Gaza beyond 2 miles and has killed dozens and dozens of Hamas fighters, collapsed their tunnels. Israel claims it's having a smashing, pun intended, success in Gaza so far, and yet Iran's done nothing. Check out this clip of the founder of Hezbollah railing against Khomeini, calling him a murderer and basically a coward.
أنت خدم خامنائي، أنت خادم، أنت عدو لله ولرسوله، أنت قاتل أطفال المسلمين، أنت قاتل طفل الرضيع في كربلاء، أنت أشد من يزيد وأحقد وأحقر. أين أنت؟ أين أنت عن غزة؟ أين أنت عن أطفال فلسطين؟ هذا السلاح الذي تعده في لبنان لمن؟ لا تقل لي أنني وأنني 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 وأنني. الأعذار أعذار الخونة نعرفها.
So there you have it. That's venom and invective from the founder of Hezbollah. Now, the current leader of Hezbollah, Sheikh Nasrallah, is going to make a national address to his people, the Lebanese. It's scheduled, I believe, for either, I think tomorrow, Thursday, okay? And it's considered to be a very important policy speech in which he basically says where Hezbollah's face is, whether it's towards war or towards continuing to stay on the side. But Israel has never been in a better position to strike Hezbollah. And I've lamented with you guys, or I've lamented to you guys the last few weeks. I told you about 2 weeks ago that it had been brought to my attention that Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet was confronted with the opportunity of a lifetime to do something that would change the whole trajectory of this war. And he vetoed it. Okay, the whole military staff was for doing whatever this was presented, and he alone vetoed it. As the days continue to pass by, I've come to believe that perhaps it really was a suggestion to preemptively attack Hezbollah while the Israeli army was at full force. It's currently in full force, nearly 400,000 soldiers under arms. That is the entirety almost of the Israeli army. They can boost those numbers up to 500,000 if they had to, but they're close to it. Okay, now I'm not a mathematical guy. That's why I ended up in the humanities. That's why my PhD is in history and languages. But you tell me what percentage is 400 out of 500, and that will tell you just what percentage of the Israeli army is currently mobilized, much of which is along that border with Hezbollah ready to strike. You also have the 2 American aircraft carriers right there to the side to deter anyone else from getting involved. And from what I was told through leaks in the Israeli media, Netanyahu vetoed that move. And if this war comes to a conclusion without Hezbollah having been dealt the fatal blow, folks, I will consider this war not to have been a victory. And the reason's very simple. You have something like 150,000 Israelis that have been evacuated from their homes. Many of these Israelis live on the border with Hezbollah. Why would they agree to go back and settle again their homes and cities if Hezbollah is still the threat of a cocked gun over their head? To do what Hamas did on October 7th, but to them instead at a later date. This war can't end until Hezbollah is defeated, even if that means that Israel opens the hostilities and makes the first move like the Israel of old in 1967. Anyway, I'm about to bring this to a close. I've been absent for the last few days. I made a video on Sunday, which was among the least watched of any video that I have uploaded yet to YouTube, which has reconvicted me that it's just not a good time to make videos on the weekend. People are busy, they're away for the weekend, or they're at church. So I'm definitely going to go back to the old paradigm of not making videos on the weekend because I don't want to make videos that people don't watch. Anyway, I hope that you watched this one till the end. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Always look beneath the video for any links that I may have posted, articles for follow-up that you can read in English, of any that I find worthy for your attention to read in English. And I think I'm going to mix with these updates a series on end time prophecy. I think I'm going to go through passages of the Bible with you that I think are very relevant and have much to say about not just this war, but the times that we live in. And I'm going to begin with Ezekiel 36. And I hope I can do that with you starting either tomorrow or the next day. Guys, again, thanks for your kind attention. And stay vigilant and be blessed. And I'll see you again in a couple days. This is Steve, the tour guide, signing off. Bye-bye.